Troma. It is Eating Miss Campbell. This is also by way of, is it Refuse or Refuge Films? I want to say Refuse. I think I'm overthinking it. Nonetheless, they have a label themselves, and it's also, you can see, in association with this release. But they are doing very limited editions of Cannibal the Musical, which I think is like limited to 1,000. Then they're doing, or maybe 3,000. Then they're like doing like 1,000 limited edition of Bloody Banjo, which is actually part one of this. And then they're doing a Toxic Avenger and a Kabukiman, which I don't know how limited those are, but those I think are UK versions in association with Troma. But here in America, we have Eating Miss Campbell, like I said, which is the sequel to My Bloody Banjo, which is got the same director, some of the same characters. I've not seen it. Didn't realize this was a sequel, which I think it's only a sequel in the way that it's got some of the same characters, but not necessarily continuing the same story. Nonetheless, Eating Miss Campbell is a bit complicated to explain, but we'll just go ahead and do it by saying this. Basically, our leading lady right here is a lesbian, and she is also a cannibal, and she falls in love with her teacher, Miss Campbell, who also is hiding some very shady stuff of her own, but it's also presented in a very kind of cool, interesting way to where, our leading lady, swears up and down that her life is basically a straight to video movie, and she's basically wanting her life to end so she can start over, and she's hoping that when she comes back and or does it again, it's a romantic comedy instead of what she gets stuck with here, which is always horror. So yeah, it's a very interesting film. It's a bloody film at times. It's not a politically correct film, which is something you would come to expect from stuff that Troma is associated with. I will say that as far as stuff Troma has released in recent times, it's probably one of the better offerings. It was a movie that was being made around the time of the pandemic, then it got delayed, and then they got back on it and they added more to it because it was a little short originally when they made it. So that doesn't really hold nothing back what they added in. But I will say this: it is 100% made to be somewhat offensive. So if being Troma should have gave it away enough, but if you are offended by things easily, this may not be a movie for you. I was not offended by it. I will say the only negative side of some of the stuff that they talk about is by the time it's being released now, some of the cultural things that they're referencing or making fun of is probably a little bit dated. Like, guns and Alec Baldwin, that's a little bit dated at this point. Um, there's jokes about the Weinsteins, which maybe those never go out of style. I don't know. But they are here. And there's also a whole lot of jokes about America's school shooting problems and Columbine and all that, which, are very serious problems. But hey, if you can't expressively get them out in a film or expressly get them out in whichever creative way you want to, then hey, what's the point of being free, right? And I will say this much. Um, while they are pretty, you know, pretty rough at times, like some of the jokes in nature, I feel like this is a director, and be it I don't know this director, but I feel this is a director that is using these type of things more, maybe not as in a spiteful way to be mean, but more in a artistic, creative way of maybe they're actually got something to say about it, so they're kind of expressing themselves in a way they see fit. So I think it's not just shock for shock value. I could be wrong, but I just get the feeling because it feels like maybe with the way this is creative and the way this is actually shot decently and the way it's made decently, that it's possible that this could be a creative thing and not just a shock for shock value thing. So I give it the benefit of the doubt. But nonetheless, this girl right here is in high school. She hates people. She hates students. They seem to not care for her either. Um, they try to do stuff to her. She does stuff to them. So it's vague, but I don't want to spoil too much. And there is some interesting characters, like they try to run the school, which everything in the movie's always got like a name. Like it's Hayden Lauder School. There's there's a Sawyer, Mr. Sawyer. There's definitely names. I think Charles Band gets referenced once or twice in this. So there's definitely names that are names of horror things. So yeah, Eating Miss Campbell, a funny movie. A movie you probably don't want to take too seriously, but a movie that's probably got a lot more going on than you think it does, and it's got good blood in it when it does have gore. So I give it a 3 out of 5. There is the case now. We'll get a good look at it. This is also by association of N.V.D Visual, by the way. Probably should have said that earlier. But there is that. A look at the back. A more drawn out plot here if you want to, pause that and read that. A soundtrack which consists of Tom Green music, apparently. We just twisted. Yeah, we've heard those. And there is your long list of extras. There's 2 different intros for some reason here. I guess they decided we'd do a different one. Also, there's a 7 Days of Hell making of documentary that I found to be extremely interesting. I always like making ofs. And Troma usually puts the best ones of those on their releases. There is your disc. But yeah, if you want to see something different, or if you like Troma stuff and want to go back into that area, this is not a bad option.